You think you're keeping your childhood in boxes, but what if it's your childhood that's been keeping you? Not just the memories, not just the things, but the rules, the expectations, the silence. Somewhere in the back of your closet, or maybe under your bed, there's an old box. You haven't opened it in years, maybe decades. You tell yourself it's not hurting anything. It's just there. But every time you see it, something in your chest tightens, a flicker of something unspoken. Inside might be a yellowed certificate with your name misspelled, or a drawing your mother taped to the fridge in 1962. A broken bracelet you never wore. A book you were told to read. These aren't just relics. They are versions of you, unfinished, unheard, unfinished still. They sit quietly in the corners of your home, but they speak loud in your decisions. They tell you not to get rid of anything. They tell you to be careful, to keep everything just in case. But you're not 7 years old anymore. And yet, some part of that 7-year-old is still calling the shots. This isn't about tidying. This isn't about minimalism. This is about identity. Who you were allowed to be. Who you were trained to please. And what part of that still quietly decorates your home, pretending to be harmless clutter, when it's really the past, still waiting for permission to leave. Rina is 73. She lives in a modest house just outside Dayton, Ohio, a place she's called home for nearly 5 decades. There's a front porch with chipped white paint, a rosebush she still tends to, and a soft stillness that lingers in every room. She's retired now. No children. No one to ask about that drawer in the back of her closet. But it's there, locked, undisturbed, and heavy in ways that have nothing to do with weight. Rina was raised in a time when little girls were expected to smile, sit straight, say thank you, and not ask too many questions. Her mother kept a tidy home and a tight grip on appearances. Her father was stern but fair, quiet most days, unreachable on others. Rina learned early on that silence was safer than honesty, and that emotions, when they came, were best folded neatly and tucked away like sweaters out of season. That drawer in her closet holds things most people would call sentimental. But to Rina, it holds something harder to name. It's not the contents that trouble her. It's what they still represent. She hasn't opened it in over 40 years. Not because she forgot what's in it, but because she remembers exactly what's there, and what it meant when she placed each thing inside. The diary, it's small, cloth-bound, with the corners worn down from being handled too much. She started writing in it when she was 16, during a summer when everything felt too loud. It holds pages filled with questions she never asked out loud, about identity, about belonging, about feeling like an extra in someone else's story. The last entry ends mid-sentence. Her mother's silver pin, a delicate piece of jewelry shaped like a feather. Her mother wore it every Sunday to church, pinned high near her shoulder. It smelled like lavender and starch. After her mother's funeral, Rina placed it in the drawer. She never wore it. Not once. It felt too much like a performance she had already played for too long. And the letter. The one she wrote, but never mailed. Addressed to a man she once loved but wasn't allowed to keep. The envelope is yellowing now, the paper brittle. She hasn't read it since the night she folded it away. But even now, standing near the drawer, she knows every word by heart. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was a truth she never gave herself permission to speak. Rina once believed she was protecting these things, preserving something sacred. But now, as the years stretch behind her, she admits something quieter, something braver. I told myself I was protecting the past. But really, I was avoiding what it still meant. Because sometimes, it's not the memory that haunts you. It's the version of yourself you were never allowed to finish becoming. And no matter how quiet that drawer stays, it whispers every time you pass it. The question isn't whether Rina should open it. The question is, what happens if she finally does? And what might still be waiting, for all of us, in the drawers we locked decades ago? When we think about childhood, we often remember moments, birthdays, school plays, long summers. But underneath those memories are rules. Not written ones, and not always spoken out loud. But rules all the same. Rules we followed to feel safe, accepted, and loved. And the strange thing is, Many of those rules are still running your home, even if you haven't realized it. Take a moment. Open any drawer in your house. The one in the hallway. The one in the guest room that no one visits anymore. You'll probably find things you don't use, don't need, maybe even forgot you had. And yet, you haven't thrown them away. Why? Because a small voice still says, don't waste. Or, someone might need that. Or the quiet guilt, it was a gift. And deeper still, what if this says something about me? These aren't just habits. These are the remnants of emotional conditioning, rules we absorbed as children and carried into adulthood, long past their usefulness. For many seniors, these rules were passed down during hard times, by parents who lived through war, depression, or deep scarcity. Saving everything wasn't optional, it was survival. Being responsible meant keeping, not discarding. But now, the world has changed. Your needs have changed. And yet, the rules persist. A plastic tray from 1984. An unopened bottle of lotion from a hotel in Florida. Birthday cards with no personal note inside. Extra cables for electronics you no longer own. You're not keeping them because they're useful. You're keeping them because you were trained not to let go. These rules go beyond clutter. They maintain roles you've long outgrown. The caretaker who keeps just in case for others. The grateful child who never questions a gift. The dependable woman who saves wrapping paper because that's what her mother did. The stoic man who stores tools he no longer uses because they once made him feel capable. Even in retirement, these roles linger. And they quietly dictate the state of your home. The truth is, being responsible doesn't mean holding on to everything. Being respectful doesn't mean keeping what no longer has meaning. And being thoughtful doesn't mean your home should feel like a museum of other people's expectations. If your home is filled with things you don't love, don't use, and don't remember choosing, there's a reason. It's not disorganization. It's emotional obedience. But the beautiful part? You can rewrite the rules. You can choose what stays, not based on fear, or duty, or some lesson you learned in second grade, but based on who you are now, and what serves the life you want today. It starts with one small question. Is this mine, or is this someone else's rule still speaking through my stuff? Rina's mother's pin sat untouched for 5 decades. Not because Rina didn't care. Not because she forgot about it. But because she didn't believe she had the right to move it. Not even an inch. It was the last thing her mother held in her hand before the hospital took her away. After the funeral, Rina placed it gently in a velvet-lined box, closed the lid, and never opened it again. Every time she cleaned her closet, she skipped that box. Every time she reorganized her drawers, she worked around it. She didn't look inside, but she knew it was there. Always. Waiting. Not for use. Not for admiration. But for something more complicated, permission. Because sometimes, clutter isn't about the object at all. It's about the unspoken authority it carries. The invisible rule that says, you can't touch this. You're not allowed to move forward yet. Many seniors have items like that. A father's jacket. A grandmother's cookbook. A letter from someone they loved before they were allowed to say it out loud. These things aren't just emotional. They're off-limits. And often, it's not logic that keeps them, it's a quiet internal voice that says, you haven't earned the right to let this go yet. Where does that voice come from? For many, it was shaped in childhood, where permission was something granted by others. You waited to be told when it was okay to speak, okay to leave the table, okay to change your mind. You learned to associate action with approval. Letting go without approval? That felt wrong. Even now. That old wedding dress in the attic? You don't keep it because you still love it. You keep it because you don't know if letting it go will feel like betrayal. The award you earned at 14 that no one celebrated? You've kept it because it still feels like proof. Not because it means something now, but because it meant everything when no one else noticed. And sometimes the hardest part isn't the emotion, it's feeling like you need someone else to tell you it's finally okay to move on. But here's the truth no one says out loud. You don't need a parent's nod. You don't need a sibling's understanding. You don't even need closure from the person who gave you the item. You are the adult now. and you are allowed to decide what belongs in your space, in your life, in your memory. You can hold a thing, honor what it meant, and still choose to let it go. Not as rejection, but as release. And maybe, just maybe, it was never about the object. It was about the moment you finally gave yourself the permission no one else ever offered. So ask yourself, gently but honestly, what are you still keeping because you're waiting for permission to stop? And who would you be if you stopped waiting? For most seniors, the idea of decluttering does not feel freeing, it feels like a kind of grief. Traditional advice, often created for younger, busier households, urges people to sort, toss, and donate, as if the act of letting go were as simple as tidying a shelf. But if you have lived more than 60 years, you know better. Your belongings are not merely objects. They are bookmarks, milestones, quiet witnesses to everything you have lived through. And when someone tells you to just throw things away, it can feel like they are asking you to erase parts of yourself. That is why the real solution is not to discard. It is to restore. When you restore, you are not just deciding what to keep or toss. You are giving yourself permission to ask deeper questions, questions that make space for clarity, healing, and emotional freedom. You do not begin with a box or a trash bag. You begin with a chair, a quiet moment, and one item. Not 10. Not a pile. Just one. It might be something small, a chipped mug, a faded scarf, an old button in a drawer. But it holds something more than function. It holds a version of you that once needed it. Then, you begin the quiet process of remembering. What role did this item play in my life? What part of myself did it serve or protect? What belief was stitched into this object? Was it love, fear, hope, duty? And the most important question of all, does that belief still belong in the life I live today? The answers are never quick, and they do not need to be. You are not sorting your past, you are meeting it again, with wiser eyes. Sometimes you will realize the item is not about what it looks like or what it does. That mug may not have been about coffee at all. It might have been the first thing you bought when you moved out on your own. A symbol of independence, chosen when you were still learning who you were. That scarf? Perhaps you wore it during a difficult winter when someone you loved was slipping away. It does not keep you warm now, but it reminds you that you endured. This is not sentimentality. This is storytelling. And when you tell the story of an object, you also tell the story of who you were when you needed it, and who you are now that you might not. Rina understood this the moment she found her old typewriter ribbon. Not the typewriter. Just the ribbon, still curled, still stained with the words she once typed into her private poems. She ran her finger across the ink-stained plastic and remembered the girl who wrote by lamplight, afraid to show anyone what she really felt. That girl never had a voice outside of paper. Rina could have thrown the ribbon away, but instead, she wrote one final poem, this time, about that quiet girl and all she survived. She tucked the poem into the box, placed the ribbon on top, and gently closed it. Then she let it go. Not because it no longer mattered, but because it had finally spoken its truth. That is the difference. You are not erasing. You are allowing the past to complete its sentence. And once it has, you can decide whether to place a period or to turn the page. Every object you own is a doorway. You can leave it closed, with all its weight behind it. Or you can step through it, slowly, intentionally, and then return to the present. Stronger. Clearer. Lighter. You do not need to let go of everything. That is not the goal. But you do deserve to become the one who decides what stays, not because someone told you to be grateful, not because you were trained to save, but because the life you live today is worthy of space. One object. One moment. One truth at a time. That is the gentle fix. And it begins with listening. Most people try to deal with their past by hiding it. They seal it in boxes, slide it under beds, or stack it in the corners of closets. The thinking is simple: if it is out of sight, perhaps it will be out of mind. But that is rarely what happens. What is hidden does not go away, it just becomes heavier. Quietly, invisibly, it pulls at you. Sometimes with guilt. Sometimes with sadness. And sometimes, with a question you do not know how to answer. That is why Rina did something different. Something small, but deeply intentional. Instead of keeping her mother's silver pin locked away in a box she never opened, she gave it a place. Not in the center of the living room. Not on display for praise. Just one small, meaningful spot in her bedroom, a shelf no one else had to see. She placed the pin in a simple frame. Next to it, she added a photo of herself at age 25. It was taken during her first year away from home. She was standing in front of a bookstore, holding a canvas bag, smiling, nervous but proud. The girl in the photo looked free in a way that was quiet, almost defiant. Then Rina added one small note beneath it. She wrote, "I kept this. But I also kept going." That is what she now calls her identity shelf. Not a museum. Not a shrine. Not a place to trap the past, but a place to let it breathe. To honor it, without letting it overtake the present. For many seniors, this shift is powerful. It means you do not have to choose between remembering and moving forward. You do not have to eliminate everything that shaped you in order to feel light. But you also do not have to live surrounded by the clutter of stories you never wanted to keep telling. The identity shelf is a way to name your experience, without being trapped by it. It is a place where you say, "This happened. This mattered. But I am still here. And I am still becoming." You decide what goes there. It might be 3 objects. It might be 1. It might change over time. But every item should speak the same truth: this was part of me. But it is not all of me. The rest? The things that no longer say anything worth repeating? You can let them go, not with shame, not with apology, but with quiet authority. You do not need to keep everything to remember who you were. And you do not need to erase your history to make room for joy. You only need one shelf. A place for the truth to sit. A place for your story to pause, not linger. Because you are not a museum. You are still alive. And that space around you should feel like it. Letting go is often misunderstood. People assume it means you must live with less, that the goal is to strip everything down to bare walls and empty drawers. But for those in their 60s and beyond, the real goal is not minimalism. It is emotional alignment. Emotional alignment means your surroundings match your values, your peace of mind, and the person you are now, not the roles you once performed or the people you once had to please. Many seniors hold on to things not because they are useful or even loved, but because they are tied to an outdated version of identity. A dusty stack of reports from a job you left 20 years ago. A set of tools from when you were expected to fix everything, even when you were tired. Cookbooks from a time when cooking felt more like obligation than joy. These items are not broken, but they no longer represent you. That is what makes them heavy. Letting the right things go means looking past condition and asking a different question. Does this reflect who I want to be now? Or is it pulling me back into a version of myself I no longer need to perform? You do not need to keep the briefcase to prove you were a provider. You do not need to keep the china to prove you hosted well. You do not need to keep the costume jewelry to prove you were once vibrant. You still are. Letting go does not erase that history. It releases it from duty. Rina understood this the moment she faced the letter. It had sat in that drawer for decades, yellowed and silent. A letter she wrote to someone she once loved but never sent. It was filled with words she no longer remembered, but feelings she never truly forgot. She did not reread it. She did not analyze it. She took it out to the backyard, lit a small ceramic bowl with a match, and held the envelope above it. She whispered only 3 words. "You already know." Then she let it fall. And she watched it burn. Afterward, she said her chest felt different. Not empty, clear. That is what it feels like to let go of something that never asked to stay, but stayed anyway because you never felt allowed to release it. This is not about reducing your belongings. It is about releasing what is no longer in service of your growth. You are allowed to keep what uplifts you. You are allowed to keep what makes you smile. But you are also allowed to release the items that speak only in past tense, those that remind you of who you had to be, rather than who you have become. Letting go is not betrayal. It is a declaration. It says, "I have carried this far enough. It is time for something else." That something else might be space. It might be peace. It might be the quiet surprise of walking into your home and finally seeing yourself, fully, clearly, and without apology. This has never really been a video about clutter. That word is far too small. Clutter is what people call it when they do not understand what it actually means to keep something long after it has stopped serving you. But for many people, especially those over 60, it is not clutter. It is a system of quiet rules. A collection of inherited beliefs. A pattern of obedience that began in childhood and now lives in the corners of their home. This has been a conversation about sovereignty. Sovereignty is the moment you stop living under the emotional weight of someone else's expectations, especially the ones that were never clearly spoken, only felt. It is the moment you decide your home does not need to reflect the child you were, the caretaker you became, or the version of yourself others depended on. It can now reflect you. Fully. Quietly. Truthfully. That is the invitation. To walk through your home, not to clean, not to purge, but to see. To notice what is here because you genuinely love it, and what is here because you were taught to keep it. Do not just ask, do I need this? Ask, did I choose this? Ask, was this ever truly mine? Some things in your home have been waiting for years, not to be used again, but to be released. Other things have earned their place, not because they are expensive or useful, but because they make you feel more like yourself. Those are the things that should remain. You do not need anyone else's approval to begin this process. You do not need to wait for a crisis, or for a move, or for someone to give you permission. You are the one who chooses now. That is the power of age, not just wisdom, but authority. You have the right to curate your space like you would curate your life, with care, with purpose, and with honesty. So if this stirred something in you, do not rush past it. Pause. Look around. Ask yourself, what in this room reflects the person I have become? Then ask, what in this room still echoes the rules I never agreed to, but followed anyway? If that question made you feel seen, like this video. Share it with someone who carries silent weight in their home. Please kindly subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you do not miss the next quiet truth we uncover together.